It's December the 14th, 1998, at about 3:23 in the afternoon, and I'm doing the third interview with Morris and Myrtle Keller. Now, if something comes up from the last interview that you wanted to tell me, just stop me and throw it out there. But the first question I wanted to ask you, I guess this interview I'd want to go back and look over your life and ask you just some certain questions and give me your ideas on it. First of all, do you remember, start with Grandpa, do you remember when you first got electricity?
Yeah, and it was just as the Grand Ole Opry come on the air, and I think that was, I forget just what, it was in the 20s, and we got, when we had electric lights, there was a line hung from the ceiling down with a bulb like that in it, and you had a old table model radio, and we'd listen to Grand Ole Opry. But before that, we didn't have electricity, or we didn't have a radio. Like I think we told this in another interview, we would go out and sit outside the fence of our neighbors. We lived in the country. We'd sit outside the fence of the neighbors, and they'd turn up real high so we could hear, what was that?
Amos and Andy.
Well, yeah, it was Amos and Andy, but there was none of them cartoons like Jacob likes. Oh, Spider-Man and stuff like that. We couldn't get that. Roy Rogers, we'd listen to that, but they would turn it up. Their parents was kind enough that they'd do that because we didn't have anything like that. We didn't even have electricity at that time.
Well, how old were you when you first got electricity?
Oh, I was probably 10 years old, something like that, 8 or 10 years old, that I can remember electricity, because back before that we had coal oil lamps, and then we had what they called the Aladdin lamp. And that was a lamp that it made the light just like electric light, only it burned oil, and you had a bulb that went on here, and as soon as you burnt the covering off of it, why, that made the light, and that would stay for a while, and then it'd crumble off, and you'd have to buy another one. And that was the way we had our light, and our heating was cook stoves, wood cook stoves, and then wood heaters, or sometimes we had coal. Later on we got coal, and of course in the wintertime, man, you'd get up, man, them floors would be like ice. You'd have to kind of tiptoe around to keep your feet from getting so cold till the fire got going. But Dad would usually get up and get the fire going, then we'd all slip out of bed real quick and get in behind the stove where we could warm up. And I remember Mom, Brian, she made bread, loaf bread. And she would make that of a night, and she would put that behind the stove. And Brian, that would raise up the most beautiful thing that you ever see. The loaves would be every bit of this wide. And when they raised up, sat behind the stove, they'd raise up like this. And then she'd go in the kitchen, slip them in that wood burner stove oven. Brian, they would come out of there.
Boy, but that's not good.
Man, them was good. And she made the buns. And I mean, Brian, the buns compared with what they made then is small now. But they was that big around them square buns. Man, Brian, you bit into them with a little bit of butter and jelly. Oh man, you talk about eating. And we always liked to go in when Mom was cooking that bread, and she'd be baking a pie or something, and our jaws we'd just salivate right there. right ready, because we knowed we was going to get something good to eat. And Brian, that bread, that was unbelievable. Bread today, there's no comparison with it. That was delicious, and we always looked for it. We was a real close family. There was myself and my brother, and even Edith at that time. And then of course Lorene and Doris Lorene and Vera came later on. we was living in Washington County, back where I told you, living back in them hills. That's where we had the good times. And you drawed your water out of a cistern because you didn't have a well. They had cisterns back then. And
What are they called?
cistern.
Cistern.
What cistern? S-I-S-T-E-R-N.
Okay, cistern.
Or C-I-S-T-E-R-N.
Okay.
Either way, but anyhow, that sat down over a hill. What it really was a kind of a big well type thing, and what primarily the purpose was to hold water, runoff water, rainwater, stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So that then you had, of course, you had to boil it, and but if you didn't do that, then you went to the creek and got your water out of a hole in there, because the creek run all the time. And your water come in out of them hills, Brian, that was cold. I mean, in the hottest of day, it was cold. And when we went to my grandpa's, they got it out of the spring house. Because back in that country, they had a lot of springs. And you got that spring water, and Brian, that's delicious. But that cistern water wasn't really that good, but that's all we had at the time, till I think later on we got a well. Now, the house set up on up on the hill. When you went down over the hill was the barn lot, and my dad had we had been pasturing Dad for us a little dog, and Dad had went into Salem, I believe it was, in a spring wagon. I don't. You probably don't know what a spring wagon is, but it's just a big wagon with a spring seat on it, and they called them spring wagons. It wasn't a big, great, tremendously big wagon. It was a medium-sized wagon. They called it the spring wagon because that's what you went to town with to get your groceries or whatever. And so me and my brother, we beat it down there just as soon as he drove in the barn lot. And boy, we thought he'd brought us some stuff from candy or something like that, and dropped that little dog out, and it scared us to death because we'd never had a little dog before. But Brian, that dog got to be our pal. And where we went, that little dog went. Even if we went swimming, that dog was there. And that was good times. I still like to think about them, how we used to swing out on that big old rope we had in a poplar tree, drop into a big old pond there and swim. It was just a fun time, boys like us. We had a garden, planted a wee back up across the creek and up towards right next to the woods. And Dad would have to lay out there with he had a hex barrel gun. You don't see them anymore. And they shot for the bullet part, it shot wood bullets. And that was unusual, More so what them was for was to scare or run off. And he'd have to get up there, that gun, shoot rabbits out of there or whatever. But like I say, them was fun times for us, and we trapped them hills. We went back up into the sand caves, and it was just a fun time for kids like us back then, because you didn't have nothing else to do, Brian. All you had to do was eat and sleep and just have a big time of playing. And I remember the time Mom would cut up apples, and she'd send us up on the roof, which had the old tin roofs. We'd go up on the roof and spread them apples out to get them dried, have dried apples. Now, Mom fixed dried apple pie, but I never did care that much for them. But other than that, they're just fun times back in there.
What was your dog's name? Remember that?
He had a spot right in his head. I think we called him Spot, if I remember right. He never was very big. He was just a small dog, like Buster, that little militia in them had.
Yeah.
That size of Buster. He never did get any bigger. But that dog, Brian, he would follow us wherever we went. And of course, then after I got older and got bigger, I got me a dog of my own, because I hunted a lot. And I didn't use shotgun, I used rifle. And if a rabbit got up, I could usually get him with a rifle, and then I couldn't hit through an open barn door. That was one of them. But anyhow, that was that little dog. Whenever I got ready to go, he was ready to go, and I'd send him into a brush pile after a rabbit, and he'd bring that rabbit out there and stop. I'd wait till I shot it, or else if it got away, he'd go after it again.
Huh.
But it was just them fun times then.
Well, Grandma, do you remember when you first got electricity? Or?
Well, one time I remember electricity. That was during the Depression, right after that we was having hard times, and we had to move into just a one little room place because we had to go out to Uncle Sam's. Back then during the Depression, they wouldn't wait on you for rent or anything. So we lived about 2 weeks in a dirt floor. They call it meat house, or where they stored meat,
Mm-hmm.
And my daddy, he'd have to get up and hitchhike, start to work about 5 miles, and then he'd have to hitchhike back. But we just stayed there, I think, about a couple or 3 weeks there. Mommy would go out and get her water out of the spring, and wash with, and we all had to sleep in one bed. Now, them was hard times. It makes you appreciate what you have, But then it was about 2 or 3 weeks, then we got just a little room in town from a lady named Aunt Ad Lucas. She was an elderly lady, and it was just one room. We had to kind of stay there for a while. And that's when I remember having a light bulb just hung down in that one room. And then we didn't have to stay too long there, because then we rented a house with 3 rooms. You had to wait on things during the Depression. Now, Daddy worked during that time. He had a job at the brickyard, and he worked every day. And when we had to go out in the country, but during the Depression, like I said, you had hard times, and people didn't wait on you for your rent or anything. So we stayed there just a little while, and then we moved to Brownstown. We had coal oil lamps, see, up there. Yeah, we had coal oil lamps, and like Morse said, we had them other kind of lamps that give out light. And back then, we didn't know what electric iron was. We had irons that you'd heat on the stove,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd heat them there, and you'd go and get them, and when that iron would get cool, you'd take that back and put it on your cook stove and let that heat up. Now, that's the way we ironed, and we washed on the board. We used P&G soap and Phil's naphtha. And they boiled their clothes, and we washed on the board, and that's the way you did it.
P&G.
P&G soap and Phil's naphtha.
Procter & Gamble?
And lie.
And well, yeah,
Is that what P&G
Well,
stood for?
I imagine it may have had some lye in it, but it was a good soap. It was a bar soap coming in bars,
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's what Mama used, was the P&G soap and the Phil's naphtha. And then they made their own starch. And you talk about clothes being clean. They just had to do it the old-fashioned way, and everybody that was the same shape that you, that's the way they did,
Yeah.
They'd hang their clothes out on the clothesline. A lot of times they'd freeze, and you take them down, and then you'd always sprinkle your clothes. Back then, women, you always ironed back then. You'd sprinkle your clothes and let them stay. That's the way Mommy did, and Pauline and us let them stay overnight, and the next day would be an iron day. But you made your own starch. But I remember that. And Mommy was like his mother. She canned a lot in the summertime. Daddy'd put out big gardens. Mommy'd can green beans and tomatoes and can a lot of food up. We had a cellar underneath that house up in Brownstown where we used the lamps and the old-fashioned irons, But them was good times, You never thought about dope. People smoked and people used tobacco. Daddy chewed tobacco, and things like that. But you never heard a tale of dope or anything like that now. And you could go to bed at night time. You could latch your screen door or leave your screen door unlocked. Never had to worry about people coming in. You'd leave at daytime and you'd visit each other. You never worried about locking your door, would you, Morse? No. And now this is kind of something too. Back then we had outdoor toilets. And on wash day, Mom and us always, our toilets was this immaculate clean. We'd use the wash water, scrub out them toilets and the toilet seats, and toilet paper wasn't heard of.
Sure.
You used old magazines or old things like that, but it was kept immaculate clean. Yeah. And
Where did you get the magazines?
well, they'd either be good gift to you, or the girls, be
Sure,
there. They
girl
was
by
teens.
catalog.
Well, now they was teenagers too, Dad, and they
Yeah.
liked to read them novels. And back then, I remember laying in the bed at night time. I always liked to go in there and get in the bed with Gladys. And them magazines, them love novels, they'd have beautiful pictures, drawn on them. and things like that. You just use up, like he said, catalogs and things like that.
Well, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
you never heard tell of it.
That's they see. If you, of course, you don't realize it, but really, toilet paper never come in to existence till probably me and her was teenagers.
We had a toilet when me and him went together. We still used the outside toilet.
Well, we did too.
But by that time advanced a little bit for Mommy because she'd got her a used washer then after Daddy died. But while my daddy was laying still on his, the cancer laying there, we still washed on the board. Me and Pauline, we'd go get our water. We'd go across the road and carry our water and bring it back, We'd have to, from a neighbor's house, they had a hydrant. And we'd go carry that water up that hill, We'd move our tub, as the sun would come and wash like that. But, yeah, we had an outside toilet. Even when me and him got married, me and him still had the outside toilet. But everything was so clean, immaculate. Around Mommy's garden, all them big gardens, Daddy'd always put one out. And Mommy'd have her flowers. Planted her pretty flowers around that garden, And this family, the older ones helped with the little ones, like Gladys and Catherine. Because I remember Gladys would tell me that Daddy would hire out, in other words, we hired out him and Gladys and Catherine, and they'd go pick vegetables for people. They paid them for it. Because she said one time she was so tired, and she sat down between the rows and said, Daddy said, now Gladys, you have to get up from there, so we've got to get this finished. So Daddy would work out for people, and he worked at the brickyard, and never went hungry while Daddy was living. Oh yes, I'll tell you, it was good times, and it was fun times, like Morris said. Back then, shows was a nickel or dime. You'd pay a dime on Saturday matinees, and things was cheaper, and about everybody lived that way. That of your friends and neighbors that we knew. Of course, we know people that had more, but we never worried about that because we was well taken care of. Mommy would can.
And Brian, to get into the shows at Seymour, one of us would pay to get in.
I never done that.
We'd go to the back door.
Did that.
We had a gang in. But you had to watch for the ushers that they didn't catch you, but you went back there and pushed the bar on that, and then they'd slip in one at a time in the show. Because really a nickel was a lot of money, a lot of money then. But another thing that when we was talking about, she was talking about how her mom canned and all.
Oh, yes.
And now Mom canned in half-gallon and gallon jars, not quarts.
Yeah.
But they did use some quart jars, but most of them was half-gallon jar. And Brian, I know if we'd get I believe it was my aunt or someone, that we'd be at her house, and she'd be a canning sausage. She'd fry it, just fry it good and golden brown, and then put a knife down that jar, and then put all that sausage in there and pour that grease on it, turn it upside down, let it set, and then tighten the lid up. And Brian, in the winter time, when you opened that up, it was unbelievable. Man, that smell beat any sausage you could ever eat. I don't care how much sausage you buy around here, there was no comparison, because most of them, they know how to fix it the old-fashioned way. And Brian, that was delicious. But I just wanted to inject that in there, because we'd go pick blackberries, Brian, and I don't know if you ever seen a number 3 wash tub.
No, but know the difference. 'Cause I'm assuming the 3
It's huge. It's huge. We would take it to the woods with us. Now, when we'd all go to the woods and blackberry picking, went and Dad and Mom. And Brian, the blackberries, you wouldn't believe in them woods. We would go back there and we'd stay about all day, but we'd come back with almost a number 3 wash tub full of blackberries. And you can, Mom cooked them, of course, and you can them in half gallons, mostly half gallons. Once in a while they'd be a gallon, but half gallon, because I can remember that real good. Because when you had a family, like you had 6, 7, 8 kids, it took a half a gallon of stuff at a time, And so she would can half gallons, and Brian, them blackberries, man, so good. She'd sugar them. And back then, Brian, you could get sugar and stuff like that for just about a nickel or a dime for a 5 or 10 pound sack. And now look what it.
My daddy raised hogs back then, some pigs. He'd down in Ewing. Of course, we lived at Brownstown, and people would save their garbage like slop for him. You call it slop, you know. And he'd pick up that slop, you know, in the evening, and there was a chute where you could keep your fascinating. But in my mind's eye, I could just sit now. You'd go down, would be down in Ewing, and you'd go down a little path, and there'd be them places where you've seen where they had different sections of where they kept their hogs. Well, Daddy raised them, of course, in the wintertime. Later on, after we got bigger, he quit that. He done that for a while. But then we'd have our meat, and people would help him butcher. You know, he would be them. Of course, they'd divide the meat. But and then Daddy would put out other people's. If we moved anywhere that we didn't have a garden place, but I hardly ever remember not having one, maybe once or twice. We lived up Anad. He would, he'd use somebody else. Someone would let him put their garden out.
And Brian, back then, a lot of times they'd keep the good meat, give the livers and stuff like that away. And that's how come I like liver so well, because we'd get a lot of liver give to us, and man, Mom would fix that and fry it with smothered in onions. Man, they wasn't no better eating no place. Wherever you wanted to go, kidneys, hearts, and stuff like that, they wouldn't keep. They just wanted the good meat. And I remember especially, and it kind of, whenever you think about it, but this lady that my dad worked for, he would butcher the hogs, and she'd want to save the blood to make blood pudding. Did you ever hear of that?
I've heard of it.
Well, that's what she'd make blood pudding, and I never did think I'd even care. No,
I wouldn't want to. But I've got to put this in the place of the opening now, because I want my children to remember this. Daddy, when he had cancer, and he turned to the Lord, you know, and people would come that had the Holy Ghost, and they'd come, Aunt Molly Allman would come and pray with him, you know, and he turned to the Lord, and he gave up his tobacco before he even went and got baptized. And I remember that evening, he couldn't hardly wait till Brother Gator. Of course, he was in a very weakened condition then, you know, because he didn't live but just a few months after he was baptized. But I remember they took him to the river, Brother Gator did, and they went out in the river. He couldn't hardly wait that evening till Brother Gator got off from work to come and baptize him. And they kind of helped him in the water. But the Spirit of the Lord come on him, and it was just wonderful. And then he took his deathbed, but I got to see him baptized in Jesus' name. And you know, I'm so glad of that I got to see my dad turn to the Lord. He was no real mean man or anything. He was a good daddy, a wonderful dad. Of course, back then, once in a while he'd lose his temper, you know, maybe bad words, you know, we should do that. But not very many in front of us kids, no, he didn't. And of course, I had a good daddy, so I got to see him turn to the Lord. Good provider, well provider, loved us girls. I can't ever remember, he had 7 girls, ever remember my daddy ever saying that he wished he'd had a boy. He was just a wonderful dad. Good father in every way, hard worker. But I'm so thankful for that I got to see my dad. But he wasn't no real mean, sinful man. I didn't mean it that way, you know. But he did have a habit for it, toward the Lord. Chewing. Back then, most people, older people. So I remember my grandma Charles. She chewed tobacco. She kept a knife in her pocket. Back then, they wore dresses or aprons with pockets in them, and she kept that knife in there, and she'd get that plug of tobacco out, you know, and she'd get her a chew off of that. Back then, you know.
She was probably really pretty, wasn't she?
She was a cute little and clean. Yes, she was. She was cute. Grandma Charles was.
Chin on that?
Yeah, she'd chewed her backer. Backer.
Well, you guys mentioned, you mentioned sneaking into the shows, and I remember when you were telling me that you had my mom the night that you gave birth to Mom. You guys were coming back from the show.
Oh, yeah.
So you guys went to a lot of shows. What kind of shows did you like? What did you go see?
They was now back then it was black and white shows.
Yeah,
you know,
no
Technicolor. Technicolor never come in till. Well, yes, it did, Myrtle. Of Because whenever we
Did
was
it?
married, they did have Technicolor shows, but
Well,
more
I can't remember
black
no
and
color
white.
show. More black and white.
More black and white. Well, if you remember,
Gone with the Wind
Gone
was
with
black
the
and
Wind.
white.
No, it wasn't. It
Back
was,
then?
No, it
in
wasn't.
In the 40s,
No,
30,
Myrtle.
that come out in 30.
I know, but
si-
you look at
39.
you get that one,
Well, I don't remember for
and
sure.
it wasn't digitally remastered. It was made just like it was.
Oh, I don't
Gone
remember for sure. I couldn't say because I don't remember that. But I know I was just about 16 then when I went to see Gone with the Wind. I
And
was just
Brian, show houses, they didn't have air conditioning, but I'll tell you what it was.
young.
There was a big tank out in the back of this show, and they put big blocks of ice in there,
He
and then they had
remembers.
big fans that blew on that ice and carried that through the show house. So that was your air conditioning.
He can remember things like that better than me. But they was there. Oh, they always have cartoons like Popeye the Sailor Man and Betty Boop. You remember? You ever seen Betty Boop?
Yep.
Yeah, Betty Boop. And always that line would come on there and just roar, you know. Yeah, they was different ones. Gene Autry wasn't Gene Autry then, and things like that. And of course, always like to see love pictures. And Tarzan. Oh, Tarzan.
Yeah, we was always big
Them
Tarzan.
Tarzan.
That was a big thing
Yeah.
back then.
Tarzan.
And I
of the Apes.
still like to see Tarzan. Yeah.
Now that was a big Johnny Weissmuller.
Yeah.
Now they first started coming out black and white, and finally it graduated to color. But Johnny Weissmuller made them when they was black and white.
Yeah.
And
That's what I remember.
what was that? The other woman? She was a swimmer.
Oh, Sonia Heen. No.
No, it wasn't her. That's Kate.
Oh, Esther Williams.
Esther Williams.
Esther.
She played with him on some of them.
She was Jane.
Oh,
Huh?
no, Jane wasn't. That wasn't Jane. Her
No.
name. See, what was her name? I remember. She was a little dark-head. No, that
I
wasn't
can't
her.
remember who that was.
But I no, that wasn't her dad.
So-
Because I remember that.
But Esther Williams played with Johnny Weissmuller in some of those pictures.
I can't think of her name right now, but he'd say, me Tarzan and you Jane.
Yeah.
And boy, they called that little boy Boy. Boy, I still, when them comes on, I like to watch them.
But we'd always look forward to that, Brian, on Saturday.
So you went to about every Saturday you go to
Well,
the show?
not every Saturday, but if we had a nickel
Or
or
a
something
dime.
like that, or a dime,
Back then.
it started out as a nickel and finally it went to a dime. And if we could get a hold of one, a nickel or a dime, and a lot of times Dad would send us coal. Dad had made a hand card. And you know, you couldn't buy coal by the time because you didn't have the money.
I didn't get to go to shows all the time. 'cause
I
we
didn't
had
either.
money.
But what we were doing, and that guy, where we go get our coal, he said, I know what you boys are doing. We'd tell you we'd want so much coal. And he said, I know what you boys are doing. Said, you're saving you a nickel and a dime for some candy or a show. And of course, Dad never did know that. I don't think he knows it to this day. But that's what we do. We go get so much coal, not the full amount, so we could have a nickel or a dime left.
Lord, they took a chance of getting whipping, didn't they?
That was a good idea. I would have done that. Yeah, I'd have done that. I would have brought less coal and went to more shows. I would have got caught.
Tell them about the time you went swimming, Bear, and your dad whipped you, or it was after you, or something like that, or something. Did you get a whipping?
I don't know.
I remember you telling one time that you went a swimming without any clothes on you and
Oh,
dog
we
you
done
boy.
that a lot of times. I told that on one of the others that we
Oh,
went in
you
there.
did, yeah.
We went in there skinny
They did
dipping.
some
Well, you could
mischievous-
skinny dip back in, Brian. Them roads wasn't traveled. Man, if you seen a wagon or an old Model T, that'd be the only thing you'd see it coming down through them hills. An old Model T, because it's set up high enough that you could get down them roads. But my brother-in-law tried to go down there, and he had a 57 Pontiac, I believe it was, or a 47 Pontiac, and he tried to get down there, and it drug the underneath of the car drug on the, because the ruts was so deep. And an old Model T, of course, you go down through there in an old Model T, lickety split. Of course, they didn't travel that fast. You could almost run and keep up with them, but still, that was the good transportation. Other than that, like I said, you just had an old spring wagon, or some of them would ride mules or horses or whatever they had for transportation, or use your legs.
But you know, the mine back then, if they didn't have the money, I didn't get to go to shows too much if they had the money. But you know, not to pester them, aggravate them, because you might have to go cut your own switch.
Yeah.
You know,
I have had to do that.
You know
I've done
the
that
vibe, yeah.
myself.
I have had
Well,
to do that.
you brought up Model Ts and stuff. Do you remember when you seen your first car?
I can't remember too much. They said when I was little that Daddy had a Model T. Of course, I was little, you know, and I can't remember everything about that. They said one time Daddy did have one. That's all I remember, you know. But back then, or growing up, you know, you've seen people have them. Just little things like that, what Gladys told me, and things like that. That and I can't remember everything when I was little, you know, like that.
Yeah.
Dad, I remember one time Dad had an old Model T touring car. It was more like like the station wagons are today. And I was driving a truck, and I got in off that truck, and of course, we lived out in the country, and I asked Dad to let me drive that out home to give me some clothes. Boy, you wouldn't believe how he cautioned me to drive that. And I've been on the road all the time on that big truck driving the roads, and he'd just cautioned me. Of course, now I can look at it and I can understand. Of course, that was his wheels. That's the only thing he had transportation on. He didn't want me going out there and wrecking it. And of course, he knows boys too. Boys gets crazy ideas of driving too, and he'd caution me not to be careful how about driving that. But Brian, I remember when they were just a one-seater, and then
Had a rumble seat.
well, no, this one didn't even have a rumble seat. What it was made something like a toolbox in the back, and a lid lifted up like this, carried your tools, your tire and stuff there, and you only had one seat where you and your companion sat, and maybe you'd have to ride your kids on your laps until later on. Then they got to go on and make them two-seaters. But I remember them especially. And then they had magnetos, they called them, to make them run, magnetos, and they was like little boxes about like this, and that made your electrical contacts to get your motor going, and you didn't have a starter. You had to get out there and crank it.
Crank on it.
Yeah. And man, sometimes that just kicked the fire out of you if you didn't watch it.
Yeah, I guess they can kick back and break your
yeah,
arm.
they could.
Oh,
Yeah,
they would.
you had to be careful. Really, you did. But you know, they used them for. They would jack a wheel up and run a buzzsaw with it.
Huh.
They put a big they put a big wheel on the outside of the wheel there. When they jacked that wheel up, then they'd hook that on a big buzzsaw out, probably as far from here across the room with a big belt, and that's where you saw your wood a lot of times. That is, if you had the money to afford the gasoline.
Right.
But man, gasoline, Brian, was about a nickel a gallon. Or I guess cheaper than that.
But like you said, a nickel was a lot of money back then.
Oh man, Brian,
Yes, it
If-
was.
you just couldn't believe that you just didn't have if you thought in times like it is today, the people today couldn't have lived back then like they have to live now.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Because about everything, your clothes was homemade. My mom made my overalls and made our shirts, and about the only thing you got new was a pair of shoes, and you got that once a year.
Yeah,
You had to go
that's right.
barefooted in the summertime to save your shoes.
Yeah.
But Brian, when you got them shoes, man, you were so
Right.
proud you wanted to show everybody them shoes.
Yeah, Mommy made our clothes too, some of our clothes. Yeah, they did back then.
You guys remember when you seen your first airplane?
Oh, well, of course, when we lived there in Seymour, why, there was an airfield not too far from where we lived. It was just
Oh,
a
yeah.
small
What
airfield.
was it called during the war? They had, see,
Well,
servicemen.
Freeman Field
Yeah.
during the war. That was when
Yeah.
that's when all the warplanes was
Yeah.
stationed there, and I helped build that airfield. But there was a small field there before that, and it run north and south, or no, I mean east and west, and where we went to school, the old casting school, it almost bordered on the casting school a lot. Of course, they couldn't build it right up to the school because of the airplane, but as far as really remembering them,
You don't remember a time when you were real young that you heard something and you looked up and thought, "Holy moly, there's an airplane!" You don't see
yeah,
that
you
too
could.
often.
You'd always,
Yeah, during the
you'd
war,
always,
you always seen that.
but even before the war, you would, if you heard something going, you'd look up,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it'd either be an airplane or a dirigible. And that was back then. That was common back then, dirigibles. And the airplane was real common there for.
Oh yeah, during
Long
the
time.
war, yes.
But this was before the war. The
Yeah.
dirigibles,
Yeah.
like Goodyear, to have a big dirigible in the air or something like this, and then, like I say, that was a small field. Then when the war come on, why they, of course, they had to expand it, put the Air Force down there, and I helped build that. I hauled gravel from down at Shieldstown. We'd haul gravel into that airfield to build that airfield. But as far as I think I only did fly one time in a plane. Is all I remember of.
I never did fly an airplane.
Never flew an airplane,
Oh no.
helicopter.
No.
No, I never did either.
Tried to learn how to ride a bicycle, never even accomplished that.
Never rode a bicycle.
Well, I tried. My Aunt Addie's girl had a bicycle, and she tried to learn me, but I never did learn. So I,
Did you rode a bicycle?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Probably a motorcycle. Wasn't it?
No, I never did ride a motorcycle, Brian. Never did have one. Never did drive one. I don't even think I could ride a motorcycle.
well, I
I
don't
could
think-
ride a bicycle, but of course, my dad had a bicycle, and then I don't
Oh, you did?
remember whenever I got my first bike. I'm trying to remember. I might have I might have got an old frame and built one up myself. I think I remember putting a little scooter wheel on it to run it. But back then, you repaired your own equipment. You made do with what you got. If you broke a spring, or you'd go to hunt another spring to patch it up so you could make it run. But that was our transportation, but mostly it was out running or walking.
Oh, yeah, you'd walked. We'd walk to and from school. We'd walk to school and walk back home and eat our dinner and then walk back to school and walk back. That's the way young people, that's the way most of the people you knew back then did that. You never thought anything about it. It never hurt us. Give us exercises. And it was just our way of life
Yeah,
back
you just
then.
used to walk in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh. That's right.
Do you guys? Let's go on to presidents. Is the first president you remember really FDR?
I remember Hoover. Of course, that was for FDR. I remember Hoover, and I remember the hard times under him until Roosevelt come in, and then now my dad, before Roosevelt came in, my dad didn't have much of a job at all. He was a carpenter by trade, and he was lucky to even get a job under Hoover's time. But when Roosevelt come in, Dad got a job on as a timekeeper on the WPA, and that was 2 weeks. You had to work 2 weeks to get pay, and if I'm remembering right, you got $24 for 2 weeks. If I'm remembering right,
Not much money at all.
it could have
was
been less than that, but I think I can remember about $24 for every 2 weeks, and then when, like I say, that was when Roosevelt come in, and you got to living better. You got things that you didn't get under Hoover, cause it was just it was tough times back then.
Oh yeah.
Roosevelt was the one that got our Social Security in. He signed that into law, and under Hoover, all you got was a hard time and a lot of it.
I've heard some bad things about.
Yeah.
It wasn't good times, Brian. And of course, then after Roosevelt, well then Truman came in, and Truman was a pretty good president. He was tough on some of them, but he was a good president. But I think really, when I think back, I think Roosevelt, and I think history proves that he done more to get this country back back on track than any president's been before or after.
So you guys, you think Roosevelt was the best president you ever seen?
He's what got the Social Security.
I'd say Roosevelt done more for the poor class of people. I'm putting it that way. For the poor class of people, which, of course, now if you think back, and you've probably read history on it, big people, big shots, they killed themselves whenever Hoover got in there because of whatever happened. Stock market crash and all of this. And even the man that had the money, he lost everything he had. Well, Roosevelt, now I'm not defending Roosevelt from the standpoint that Roosevelt didn't do some bad things, because that happened during his, any president, I don't care, I've read history on it, any president had pros and cons in their way they run government. But Roosevelt, and as far as I can remember, he done more for this country to get this country back on track again than any president. And we owe our Social Security that we get today because of President Roosevelt, and the many times that they'd tried to take it away from us, they never could get it taken because the law was made that even Congress couldn't mess with it and take it away. So that's what and I think I would agree that Roosevelt done more for our country because of the slump that it was in to get it back on track than any president.
What did you think of Eisenhower?
No, just to be honest, I under Jerry Ford and Eisenhower, there was a lot of jobs lost, and a lot of people didn't have jobs. And then John Kennedy come in, and jobs began to pick up, and everything began to look real good again. And then you'd have somebody else come in and flop it back down again. And
was Nixon during
Nixon, we had Nixon. Of course, he was a Republican president, but we had good jobs under him. I mean, we worked all along under him. We had good jobs under him, but the rest of them, Jerry Ford, and I had a good job under
Carter.
John Kennedy, a good job under Carter, but Carter was I don't think he was. He might have meant well, but he just didn't have the push to get things done like these other presidents did.
He was a heck of a nice guy, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Do you remember much about McCarthyism, about communism?
I don't see.
Well, not real familiar. I remember some of the trials. I remember listening to some of the trials, but of course I was too young then to pay that much attention to it. I know that that trials cost him a seat in the Senate because of what he was
Cost
doing.
him his life before it was over.
Yeah, that did.
What do you remember as far as communism goes? Do you remember dropping the bomb on Hiroshima?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
What do you remember how you found out about it, and what was your thoughts?
Well, I remember of that plane going up. I think Jimmy Doolittle was the pilot, and they flew that into Japan. And let me think, I'm trying to think who gave the order. And if I'm not mistaken, that was, trying to think who that was, Brian.
The president, you mean?
Yeah.
It was Truman.
I believe it was, that finally gave the order for them to drop that bomb on Hiroshima. And then there was one right after that dropped on Nagasaki.
2 or 3 days later, yeah, on Nagasaki.
And I think Truman was behind both of that. And when they done that, the war almost ended at once because they was fighting some terrible battles in the South Seas and there in them islands. Them Japanese was just clinging on, and they was the kind that they believed in committing hara-kiri or whatever they wanted to call it because of die for the emperor and all that.
Kamikaze, you mean?
Yeah, kamikaze. Well,
And things.
yeah, I guess that's what it was. But well, some would call it Kiri or something like that,
Hmm.
commit suicide, run right into fire.
Suicide squads, yeah.
They would run right into the.
Well, they'd crash their planes into ships
Well, that
and
was
things.
kamikaze.
Yeah.
But whenever they dropped that bomb, Brian, the war went in fast.
Well, how long did it take you guys to figure out when you heard that that bomb was dropped? Didn't you think, what kind of bomb could they have dropped to make
Well,
that much to do
you
that
know,
much damage?
Thinking back then, you couldn't realize. You didn't realize how devastating it was. Really, you couldn't. Because now they had television then, Brian, but the devastation you couldn't fathom the devastation until they showed you pictures of it. How
Well,
devastating it could be.
But
well,
the-
they said they when they messed with America, when they done that bomb Pearl Harbor thing, that they woke sleeping giant. So
Yeah.
our nation. has
I don't
been
know
the
whether you ever
nation
saw
that-
that show, Torah.
Yeah, well,
That
sleeping
best
giant.
depicts that whole thing.
Yeah.
Before Japan surrendered. That's the best. I like that show the best of any of them because you get a real picture of what was happening. And of course, my brother was there after. I think this. I'm thinking that maybe this was before Pearl Harbor was bombed. That he was there, and they was a convoy from Hawaii to the Italian shore.
Yeah.
And I think that was before Japan hit Hawaii.
So when did it dawn on you? And when it did you get scared? Did you think, my gosh, that if somebody drops one of these bombs on us, it's all over with?
I don't think we even thought about it that way. In afterthought, you think,
No.
well, and of course, whenever we're talking this way, we wasn't thinking too much about the loss of life and whatever.
Well, the nations, the people over here, see, that's when the war plants and things all started up. Our people worked together. They would sacrifice. Because our boys went over there. His brother went over there, and other people's boys went over there. And we just, everybody pulled together and sacrificed. That's when the food stamps, people didn't have nylons and your sugar and thing. You got jobs at the factory. Them that couldn't go into the service, they done other work, see. And even that's when the big movie stars and things, they got out and worked for the war bonds. Like Bob Hope, he'd go overseas and entertain the boys over there. So I think our nation, pulled in a whole, all worked together. What one couldn't go in and fight for their country, they done otherwise. Like Morris, he worked in a war plant. Well, I did too. We'd either work on them big machines and made bullets and things like that.
And when you're talking about, your grandma was talking about hosiery, you didn't have hosiery.
No,
They would
nylons.
paint a nylon, look
Yeah.
like nylon, paint it on their legs,
Go
make the
better.
stripe down the back,
Yeah.
made it look just like real hosiery.
Yeah.
Oh, but
Seriously, yeah.
So
That was done. Now I don't say it was done real often, but there was occasions that they did do that. And then finally they kind of released a few things to the public, but not that much. Like she said, you had to have stamps for gas. You had to have
Oh, yeah.
you had to have meat stamps. You had to have sugar stamps.
everything was rationed.
Right.
everything was right. But everybody done their part, pulled together. And no doubt over there in their country, they done a lot of suffering too. Like I said, they're thinking, how times has changed now, how we've forgiven, and it should be that way. Because they was people like your family, little Sarah, and like my little grandkids, the citizens, even over there in Germany at the time, when people is in concentration camps. See, Frida Moore met Johnny Moore over there and married him, and that's how come she got to come to the States, bring her little boy. They fell in love over there. And so it's just a big model, a mind-boggling thing. To think now that these places, they've got factories over here where our boys can work. So it has to been a forgiving time, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
A different generation, a different time. And now we're
A
living
different
a different time.
understanding.
Yeah, and forgiveness and
understanding.
peace. Isn't that something to think about?
Oh. Do you guys remember much about the Japanese? Do you remember?
Only things we heard, stories we heard, and pictures, movie pictures, and things like
They
that.
rounded them up right after Pearl Harbor and put them in concentration camps here in the United States.
Yeah, right.
They were spread around.
Right.
Do you guys remember that? And
I remember seeing it, but I don't remember it.
probably didn't have a whole lot of Japanese around this part of the country, did you?
No, they was more up in the east.
No,
East or west?
you
Yeah.
can't remember anything about
East
that.
and out in California, places like that.
Well, do you remember when you first heard about the Holocaust? When that started coming out?
Well, do you remember? See, we've seen pictures. Well, it had to come out to light. Because, Brian, didn't they say that people over there knew about it? It took a while for, like that Anne Frank, and how they had to hide, and how even maybe some of the big ones knowed about it.
Well, a lot of people didn't believe it. when it
But
first
yeah,
started
that's
coming out.
true. But there was one man. What was his name?
Schindler.
Yeah, that saved millions of
Oscar
Jews.
Schindler.
Yeah,
Schindler.
and we've seen that show. And then last night or the other night, I seen a show. What was it about? And it's a true show too. It was about these men. 600 was in
Escape
the,
from Sotobar.
yeah, and it's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
They was
That's
in
a
the,
true
yeah.
show.
And
I've
so
seen
them concentration camps was around over there, but it was a while before the American people
But-
heard about it before it got out. Is that right?
But the
Oh,
thing
it's shocking.
when we heard it in this country, it enraged the people
Well, a lot
here
of them, yeah.
against the German, against the
All
Nazi
of them
party
did
for what they
that.
was doing
Oh, yeah.
to innocent people. It
Yeah.
really did. It enraged people, and it made you want to
Well,
retaliate whatever way you thought you could to
Oh, my.
stop it.
Well, that's the reason we worked and helped. That's the reason everybody done their part.
Yeah. Well, I know people talk about the shocking things that you see on television now, and in the 1990s, the violence and everything. But looking back at the history of what happened there in Germany and the Holocaust, it seems like nothing could be more shocking
Yeah,
than that.
that's right. That's right there.
You're right, because it involved so many people all at one time. That was the shocking part of it. You couldn't believe it till you seen it.
Well, is that the way it was when you heard the news? Did you think,
Oh, yes,
that
it
this
was
probably
shocking.
didn't happen?
Well, no, we believed
we
it
really
after it
believed
came
it
out.
then, Brian, because we could see so many things that was going on, and of course, the news was pretty well get out at that time.
Oh yeah, we had radios.
And
See,
you had
then.
radios, you had
Yeah, had
black and white
radios.
televisions, whatever. But you could see some of the horrifying things that would come out of there, as well as the Japanese War. You'd see some
And
of
the
the most
Germans.
horrifying things come out of there. But when we think about the Japanese War, it was horrifying on both sides.
See, maybe there was retaliation. You never know.
The American was retaliation against the Japs, and
When
the
the war
Japs was
came.
retaliating against the Americans. It was just a retaliatory war.
But they say the Russians. Now we heard the Russians was a cruel people too, wasn't they? If they got them, put
Joseph
them in
Stalin was very bad.
concentration, and the Holocaust and them, and then that. There's a book, that woman, and we seen it on television. What was her name? Her and her sister was put in that
Corrie
concentration.
ten Boom.
Corrie ten Boom, and they even was books wrote about that in a movie. So,
She was from Holland.
yeah, but they was put in the concentration
Yeah.
camps, and about the Anne Frank and them,
But you couldn't believe the cruelty, though, Brian.
the cruelty.
It was hard
How
for
they
you
starved.
to picture in your own mind how one could be so cruel. One nation could be so cruel
To another
to a
Yeah.
group of people, and you're looking at trainloads of them. How could they be that cruel? And it made you really rage within because of seeing what was happening to people that was innocent
I think
people.
it shocked a lot of people. And I think the time we're living in now, how wonderful it is that war's not going on like that. That there is a time of healing where nations has forgive each other and can work together. That is the wonderful part,
Yeah.
because we're not in that time. But yeah, I believe it did. I believe it. And how people suffered. How on both sides, how they lost loved ones, just like the American people lost.
I couldn't even imagine.
No, you can't. You can't imagine. You just done what you had to do and worked whatever you could do. Now, see, he was 4F. He couldn't go in the service.
Right.
But his brother, see, they took him.
Yeah.
No.
Well, let's move on to another, more bright subject.
Yeah,
than
something
that.
more happier. Yeah.
Well, tell me about the development that you can, if anything you can remember about modern medicine, about when you start noticing things changing.
Oh, he could tell. all about that.
Onion poultices,
Oh.
onion juice before medicine.
And when you was little, Brian, you know what our mom and dad give us? Castor oil. Oh, how we dreaded that.
They sit on the Little Rascals. They put in that
Ooh,
castle.
take that castor oil.
What was that for?
Well, if you've got to take a cold or anything, they'd give that to you for your bowels, see, to give you a physic.
Oh.
Yeah. And they was something else. Oh, Gladys will tell you about it. It was the awful smelling stuff. They call it acidity. But it was something wrapped up in a little rag. You remember, Brian, that stunk and that tasted awful. They put that on a string, and you wore that around your neck. You wore that to school. And they even put...
What was it supposed to do?
To keep you from taking colds.
Keep you from croup.
Oh, it was the awful smelling stuff. But now for colds, Mommy would...
Did it
It'd
work?
chase devils away,
Yeah.
that would do it.
Well, I guess it did them old-fashioned remedies. And if you took a cold, they put turpentine, and that's the coal oil, and Vicks salve, and mix that up together. Rub that on your chest and your back and underneath your arms when you was little, and then warm cloths, out in cloths or something. Put that on your chest, and even the onion poultices, and them old-fashioned
right.
ways worked. Yes, they did. And you drank it. They'd put sugar, they'd slice them onions, and you could still do that for little Sarah if she took the croup. It wouldn't hurt her. And you sliced your onions up in a bowl or a cup, and you put some sugar over that onion juice, over them onions, and that made that onion juice. And they'd give you maybe a teaspoon or two of that.
What was that
it
supposed
worked
to do?
for colds.
It'd
Colds,
kill
yes.
croup. It'd take the croup out of you.
Well,
Yeah. And
Yeah,
and onion poultices, Brian, that was terrible.
that's the way they
would-
did.
Them hot onion
Vicks
poultices,
salve.
you put them on you just before you went to bed. They'd sew them up in a cloth, and they'd put
That's
them
the
on your
truth.
chest. And of course, they'd be real hot, but you had to have a cloth underneath that. Put it on your chest, and the next morning you got up, you was like this.
It'd be
Just holding that
cold.
away from you. It was cold. It was the cold, and you got that off of you. But it worked.
Them
It would
old-fashioned remedies work.
It would work. It sure would.
Oh,
Yeah, they'd sure do that. Of course, they couldn't run to the doctor all the time, and they'd find out from older people how to do that. Yeah,
Well, those back in them times, O'Brien, things was handed down to the old people on down to the day that we were living in. Those were old-fashioned things was handed down, and then they was proved that they would work.
yeah.
That's why people would use them, just like she's talking about the onion poultices and this stuff that you drink, and that was proved it'd work, so they'd use it, and it
I
did work.
can't remember Mommy ever give me coal oil to drink. I know she gave me that castor oil. Ooh.
Well, you had
And the
what I was referring to though. you had a number of different things mixed in that.
Well, that could be true.
You had coal oil, you had onion juice, you had I forget what other thing it was. All that mixed up in there with sugar to make it palatable that you could take it. It never did kill us, so evidently
It must
I
have
know,
been all
right?
right.
evidently it wasn't that bad. But man,
But you couldn't run down to the store and get a bottle of aspirin, so what'd you use for pain? Did you take alcohol? Did you bite bullets? What'd you do?
well now you could get aspirins, and I can remember you could get aspirins when I was after I come out of the country in the town, and I'm trying to remember just when that was. I was probably maybe 11 or 12 that you could get them then, and but as far as lunch meat, you just couldn't. What the lunch meat that you got, they had that what they call red bologna.
How'd we get from medicine to lunch meat?
I don't
Well,
know.
I was just, I don't know. We're
Go on
we're
with lunch
just
meat.
But we'd go in the store, and in the store you had a barrel of crackers here, and a barrel of pickles here, and barrels of stuff.
Seemed like the bologna was better back then.
And the bologna was good, Brian, compared with some of the bologna today. They'd go in there and it was in ice boxes because you didn't have refrigeration stuff like that. They'd go in there and get you a big, and they'd cut it off in a big chunk. And it
was all unreal for some of that old-fashioned
you,
bologna.
you reach in there in that cracker barrel and get you some crackers. Of course, they were stale, but they were still eatable.
Yeah.
Reason I said that, when we moved into Seymour, if I remember right, aspirins was on the market at that time.
Yeah.
And like I say, I must have been 11 or 12 years old at that time when we come in there. But and a lot of your medicine then was patent medicine, just like you go buy a bottle of cough syrup or whatever, or you get them Vicks cough drops, and then there was another of the brothers cough drops. I can't remember what that was.
Smothers Brothers or something like that, I forget.
Yeah, it was 2 men on a cough drop box, and you got them, and they pretty well stop a cough if you got to them in time.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, compared with now, the people back then were pretty resilient to cold, where today they ain't.
Well, getting back to that, I know what Brian means. It's advance of medicine. Now, when Janice had her tonsils taken out when she was about 8, they used ether, and now they've got a more of a, an easier way to put you out. They put that in your veins, intravenous. So when she had that, they put that old ether on you like they did me, and I had to have my appendix taken out when I was 15. Mm-hmm. So things is more advanced. They've got more knowledgeable, and even in everything from a cold to your appendix to serious open heart surgery. They've got things now, and even in tests as they go through. They can go up through, like they did Brother Morris, through his groins, and do things more painless.
Back then, though, they thought they had to put you to sleep, but now they don't even put you to sleep.
Yeah, sometimes they don't.
Outpatient, yeah.
See, they don't put you to sleep. When they operate on my neck, I never went to sleep. When they put this pacemaker in, I never went to sleep. When he went through my groin, both sides of my groin, up to my heart, I never went to sleep.
I would want to go to sleep on that. Anything to do with my groin, I'd want to go to sleep.
Well, they cut him on both sides.
They cut me on both sides, went up both sides, and I could watch it on the monitor. I was awake, Brian.
Yeah.
But of course you was numbed in your groin. But I could watch it, and I watched that wire go up, and when it made a turn like this, Brian, I could feel that. Oh, that hurt so bad. And I'd groan, and that doctor would back it off and start another way.
And back then, that would be life-threatening in itself.
Back then, heart trouble wasn't hardly treatable back then. They had a heart pill, if I remember right. They had a kidney pill. But other than that, they wasn't nothing matched. As far as heart surgery, it just wasn't known.
And isn't that something to think about then?
Oh, yeah.
The advances that they've made now, Brian, compared with then, is just like leaping from dark into light.
Yeah.
Well, it is, really.
Yeah.
Did you ever drink alcohol to get rid of a cold? I've heard a lot of older guys talking about that.
They made medicine. My grandma made it, and it worked too. My grandma made a medicine out of rock candy and liquor, and what else did they put in it? Well, Sue may have the recipe for that, and Shirley Lewis may know about it because my grandma made it, and it worked. You take it as a medicine, but it's got liquor in it.
I've heard people say they got
tied
on a drunk and they'd wake up feeling a lot better. So, I don't know.
But Grandma made the medicine out of it.
You guys just wouldn't sit around.
No, we didn't for that. But Grandma made the medicine. We took it as cold.
Well, when you guys got married, you were working in the war factory. You had Mom. It was 1944, 45. 45, I think.
We were married in 43.
43, so 44.
44.
So you started having kids. It's mid-40s, going on to the 50s. You're married. You're living here in Newcastle. When did you start getting your first appliances? When did you start? When did you get your first refrigerator? Or your first modern appliance?
Well, you went to that other subject. Don't get back to that. I can't say that I've never tasted a liquor, because I have. And I've tasted I've drank that homemade brew one time years back. It's kind of funny getting back on that. Jim Matlock and them made some homemade brew when Linda's little, and I drunk some of that, and it made you woozy. Now that's the truth. I can't say I've never tasted of or drank it, because I can't say that.
Jim made this?
Oh, Jim Matlock.
Jim
made that. Yeah, Jim Matlock made one time homemade brew, in his home. And me and Morris, when we was young, we was invited over there. And Linda's just a little bit baby.
That's how.
And I drunk some of it. And it
was
made
potent.
you drink. Oh, it potent. So
Did
I
she
can't
get-
say I've never drunk that
Did
because
she
it
get
did.
drunk?
Oh, it did. It made you woozy. So I thank the Lord that Catherine, of course, Catherine took care, but I did drink some of that homemade brew. That's before I was ever in church. Now that's when I was young.
Did she get drunk?
Yes, it made you drunk. That homemade brewed knock you for a loop.
She didn't take her clothes off and run around
No,
out in the
no.
streets, did she?
No, it didn't do that.
Well, that's good.
It would taste like, was it like beer?
Oh man,
Yeah.
when it hit,
Yeah,
it went
right.
down good,
Yeah,
but
it
when it hit the bottom, it exploded.
I never done that no more.
I bet you
I-
didn't.
And Jim
Oh,
had
they
drank it and had to work the next day. And
Of course, Catherine
get
then
a-
was with me,
he was doing inventory over
Yeah.
at Chrysler, and he'd get over in one of them barrels and couldn't hardly get out of it.
Yeah, and
It'd
it
be
didn't
so
take
easy.
much. Of course, thank the Lord that He forgive me for that, but I can't say I never did do that. But they took care of me. No, that was awful. I never done that. The Lord did that.
You
That
probably
there.
did it a couple more times, didn't you, Grandpa?
Not the homemade brew.
Thought you might have.
He done it. But I did that one time, and
Okay.
it knocked me for a loop.
Yeah.
Never done that in the Lord.
Well, do you remember your first modern appliance? Your first refrigerator or stove?
Well, back then, Brian.
Remember the first ice box?
Yeah, up Grandma. We didn't have none back then till later on. Then Mommy got an ice box when I was more or less a teenager. We'd come up and stay with my grandma, and she'd have an ice box with that ice in it, and we thought that was something, Brian. Lord, we'd just eat that ice. But then later when I got older, more of a teenager, Mommy had an ice box when we got married. And they'd deliver that ice, them big chunks of ice, to your house. Yeah,
Slide it into your ice box?
yeah, that's what they did. You had your ice man to come.
And after me and Grandma got married and come to Newcastle, we had an ice box over there on Spring Street. We lived over
Yeah,
there.
we did. Yeah, we
I
had
kept my
ice.
beer.
Kept your
But he
beer in
didn't
the ice
keep
box?
that very long either, Brian. That's
no,
a thing of the past.
no, after I caught Linda.
yeah,
and-
yeah, we're
no,
not
I let
proud of
Lin-
that.
No, I'm not bragging or being proud of it, but of course I don't think I really realized what I was doing. That Linda, when I'd drink me a beer, I'd pour her a little out in a cup. She loved it.
Yeah.
She loved it.
Well,
But when I caught her, Brian, I kept whiskey in a bureau drawer. And
yeah, but you're not proud of that.
I'm not proud of this.
Oh, I know.
I'm really not, seriously. Maybe I'd not even tell it. I think I'll just let that go.
You don't
Yeah.
want to talk about that? Okay.
Well,
That's fine.
Well,
I don't want you.
That's fine.
It's pitiful that it.
well,
died.
Brian asked me. I did drink some of that
yeah.
homemade brew.
Mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was with my sister and Jim, and I was with my husband, and I did drink some of it, but I never done it no more.
But you know, Brian,
Thank the Lord, that's all
you got to
forgiven.
look at it. You're blind before you come to the Lord. You don't know the seriousness of what you're doing with your little children until God opens
Well,
your eyes to it.
Through your mistakes,
My little Linda,
Yeah.
I couldn't see giving Linda a little beer would
no,
I wouldn't give her
he was
enough.
young.
I wouldn't give her enough to get her so woozy or anything like that. But she would look so wistfully at me when I was drinking that beer, and I'd just give her a few drops of it. But
Through your mistakes and through my mistakes
learned.
that the Lord has forgiven us for, you can help your grandchildren, as they grow up. Never be enticed, even if you're with a friend. Maybe sometimes you can't always be with mom and dad. Maybe you're with a friend that maybe you trust, and your dad and mom may trust even. And they'd say, well, now you try this, or take a little puff of this. It won't hurt you. You can learn that and say no, because just say no to that all the time, because that's habit for them. Or maybe if you have a boy, maybe he'd get out in a crowd, maybe someone might have a can of beer. They'd say, just taste it. And they could say, no, because that's harmful, and that'll hurt you. And that's what they tell them, to walk away about the drugs and things. Of course, that was never heard tell them. But
Right.
through your little mistakes, you come to yourself and see, where that would hurt you and be wrong. Well, you don't do that no more. And you say no to your friends. So you never know. That's up to mom and dad, to train them up in the way they should go. just like me and Morse, we learned by just a few mistakes that we didn't do that no more.
Mm-hmm.
And we can tell our grandkids, say, no, don't do that. That's harmful. See?
But after the Lord came into our lives, that made the difference from the standpoint of raising Linda and Donna. Of course, they was the two we had at that particular time. And it helped us from the standpoint of we didn't want to do something that would be against the laws of God, and we'd try our best to raise them the best we could, compared with what I was doing before that, because I wasn't even thinking of what I was doing at that time. And that made me think, don't do that, or don't.
Well, it was just the Lord in that. Just like we said, a lot of times Mom and Dad, they think, oh, they've never made mistakes. But you learn from your mistake where you might be able to help your grandkids or your children, you know.
Yeah.
But that, I didn't do that no more. Of course, I was with my sister and my husband, things like that, but I didn't do that no more.
All right then. Well, how about television? You guys did you have a television when you got married?
No, we never
No,
got television until
mercy,
after
no,
we
Brian.
moved back over there, back at Jesse.
We was back in Jesse's and Maud when Nala heard tell of a television
Yeah.
for $50. And back around then they was getting television where they could watch the cartoon. Of course, we was in church then at the time too.
Mm-hmm.
And so Morse got the television for $50, and we got to watch Tarzan. And then wrestling it come on. First
Them
time
girls,
you get so mad.
Them girls that get so mad, and I'd have to shut the television off. They get mad at that wrestling. Linda
We'd
get
all get
hostile,
upset,
Donna
probably.
Sue get hostile, and I'm telling you,
Dick
I had
the
to shut
Bruiser.
it off.
Dick the
Dick the
Bruiser.
Bruiser would make them so mad, and they'd get real hostile, and I just have to shut it off. Say, we're not going to watch it. If you're going to do it this way, we're just not even going to watch it. And so we'd turn it off. But what the thing for us was the enjoyment that those little kids got out of watching cartoons and stuff. That was worth the $50 we paid for the set.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it advanced on us. He got better pay, you know. Now we're blessed where we can have a good television. But a lot of times it'd be dim, you know, wouldn't be real good.
I'd have to work on it all the time. I was working on mine, and I was going to other people's, working on theirs, getting their televisions to go on so they could see television. And then it finally got to me so bad I just couldn't do it anymore, and I just quit that.
Yeah. And at all this time you were working for Dickerson's and Chrysler both. You were a busy guy.
Yeah, I was working 2 jobs, and then I'd make garden while when I wasn't. When I'd get off early at Dickerson's, I'd go out there and make garden. And then if I worked late at Dickerson's, I just get in time from Dickerson's to maybe change my shoes
Yeah.
and go to work. I didn't even have time to eat.
Yeah, I remember that. Vernon and Tom worried so much about you.
But Brian,
It helped us.
It helped me to get, because man, back then I was laid off. I think I was about all I lost was about 7 or 8 months, and out of that 7 or 8 months, I lost probably not. I was out. I was on to my last check, Social Security. No, yeah. Well, no, it wasn't Social Security. It was Chrysler. No, it wasn't.
Work
It was
comp.
unemployment. Unemployment. I'll think of it directly. It was unemployment. I was ready to draw my last check when my neighbor come and said, George Dickerson wants to talk to you. And I went out there, and George told me, he said, I'll tell you what you do. He said, if you want to go to work for me, he said, you try it for 2 weeks. Then if you don't like it, there's no hard feelings. I'll not have none, and you won't have to worry about me being mad if you quit. So then I worked right on, and then I got called back to work. And he said, will you work for me of a day? Because I was on afternoons. I said, well, yeah, I'll work for you. So I worked 8 years on that. And, of course, that helped me because I got my ceiling insulated and all that stuff. But this house, when I bought it, Brian, it was just a shell, really. And we had to put new ceilings in it and all this and had to insulate it overhead. But all of that helped me to get a little bit better all along because, see, I was only, when I come in here, I only made 65 cents an hour in Chrysler.
You got to make $3 an hour. It was big money.
Yeah.
So see, times has changed. Look how it's went on to the best advance.
Oh, yeah.
See, you're looking at 1944 now. When I hired in there, 65 cents an hour. Tops was 90. $1.01 was tops on production. And now look what it is.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a lot of a few years there, and it really jumped sky high.
Well, let's move on into the 50s then and talk about some significant things of the 50s. Do you remember much about the Korean War? Or they call it the Forgotten War.
No, I don't really remember much about that, Brian.
Brian, are you cold? I can shut that door and turn that heat on. Are you chilly?
Oh, no, I'm fine. Are you? Are you
Well,
chilly?
I'm okay.
Well, let's take a break for a second. Maybe we can go a couple of those times.
Okay.
Your grandkids started to be born in the 60s. Late 60s.
You was the first one, Brian.
Yeah, 1967. So between the beginning of the 60s, a lot of things happened. Of course, you had Kennedy being assassinated. The Vietnam War started. You had Lyndon Johnson coming in. Is there anything significant before 1967 that stands out in your guys' minds about anything?
Well,
About the way your life it was?
when Lynn and Kitty got married, she followed him to Texas, and we didn't get to see her for 2 years. Then when they come back, she stayed with us a year, and she worked at the hospital. And Kenny was over in Korea, wasn't he? Over in Korea, and she stayed with us, and then
You missed your little girl when she was in
oh
Texas?
yes, we missed Linda. Yes, we did.
Oh,
But we know she should go.
Yeah.
She should be with him, and know that
Yeah.
she loved him. You know, and she was this. She went on a bus, didn't she, to where he's at?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
I talked to Mom and she said you guys never called, or I
No,
think she
we
said
didn't
she
have no
wrote,
phone.
You
You
wrote
didn't have no
some.
phone.
We wrote letters back and forth. We never had no
No.
phone.
Yeah, you didn't have phones then like you do now. You know, you had.
Well, we didn't have no telephone till he started working for Dickerson's, and that's when we could afford a phone. See, when he started, and me and Linda, we wrote backwards and forth. And I guess of course, we missed her, yes, but we knew she was happy, and know that Kenny was happy. And then she lived with us for that year. Of course, her and Donna Sue worked at the hospital, and Kenny over there, of course, he'd send money home with him, Dad, and she'd bank it.
Mhm.
She'd bank her money. She'd give me, I think, $10 every. That's how I got my living room suit. She give me $10 every 2 weeks when she got paid, and of course we bought the groceries and things, and which we wanted her to stay here, and we was happy that she was with us. But she give me $10 every 2 weeks. Now that was big money back then. And Donna Sue would give me $10 every 2 weeks, and I bought me a new living room suit, didn't we? Yeah, with it. Yeah, and they'd come in, they'd work out there. Of course, they was full of energy, Brian. I'd basically housekeep. I had my house cleaned up. But them girls would come in every evening, and you talk about going through this house like a sieve. They'd basically house clean. I mean house clean from top to bottom again. Yeah, they did. So we just had happy times. Enjoyed it.
Well, let me ask you guys one more question, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about some things that I remember as growing up. We haven't really talked about some of my memories. And, but let me ask you this, just out of curiosity. I told you earlier about that little story my mom had told me. Did you ever see anything that you couldn't explain, like a UFO, a spirit, a ghost? Did you ever have any weird, unnatural experiences?
No, Brian, I can't say that
I
we
can't
have.
remember that, what Linda said she's seen.
Well, we'll talk about that at Christmas. We'll
can't
discuss that.
remember
But she told me a long time ago. Okay.
Right.
Well, let's talk about a couple of things I remember. And one thing that I remember that I never really talk about much is Midge.
Midge?
Oh,
Yeah.
Midge.
Yeah.
Oh, that dog.
And for people who don't know, Midge is a dog. What kind of dog was he?
She's a
Bull.
Boston
Boston
Terrier,
Terrier.
Boston Terrier.
Okay, I remember Midge.
Yes. She was given to us. We took her.
She was
Dickerson.
But she was a good dog. She was a good
Why,
house
it
dog.
made her mad too when you left her. She'd care. She'd eat on my new
Who was
couch,
that?
tore in.
Jim Dickerson.
Jim Dickerson, and leaped through the screen door when we leave her and make her mad.
Yeah.
She tore the screen door and would tore my dad and poured. And he said that's the reason they got rid of her. But we was good to her, yes.
Well, I remember whenever I come to Grandpa and Grandma's, I get the Midge was it wasn't just Grandpa and Grandma's. It was Grandma, Grandpa, and Midge.
Yeah.
It was Midge's house too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we was good to
We
her.
all
Yeah,
loved
well,
Midge.
We found
When
it.
she calmed down, she quit doing.
Yeah,
she quit
quit
getting
doing it
mad,
after-
but it made her mad when we leave her.
After a while, she quit that. Yeah.
But Petey was a special one.
You like Petey?
Petey was my special one, yes. But Becky and Tommy, when they separated and divorced,
We
I
kept
ended
both
up
them
with-
dogs, Brian, till they
But
was old.
Petey was a special. I took good care of Midge too, but Petey was a special because it was little, And we did held on to her longer than I had to have her put to sleep.
Yeah.
She was treated like a little kid.
That was a he.
Yeah, it was a
Petey
he.
was a
Yeah,
he.
Petey was. Yeah, they all loved Petey too.
I remember
Yeah.
when Petey was a puppy.
Oh, just a little
He
bit
never
of
was
that.
very big.
Yeah.
I remember when Tommy and Becky brought him out
Oh,
to
he
the
was
house,
full of energy.
and we would
Oh,
throw those
yeah.
balls, and man, that thing
He was full of energy.
Yeah.
fly.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we had
He,
enough.
and he used to follow me, Brian. I'd go out there and crank up that rotiller, and he would follow me up and down the road till he got tired. Then he'd go up there and lay under that big tree out there, and I'd go a couple more rounds, and I'd look around. There he was, right behind me, walking the rounds with me. Then he'd go back up there and lay down.
Yeah, Petey, he was just like a little kid. Yeah, we missed him, yeah. I cried, oh my, I thought I'd done my crying the night before. Because I told Becky, I said if anything ever happened where I'd have to put Petey to sleep, we'd call her. Well, Linda called Becky and let her know, and then she came down here and got Petey and took to have him
Did
put
she
to sleep.
did she take him herself? And you
Yeah,
didn't
she
get-
took him for me, but I
That
paid
was
for it.
nice of her.
Yeah, 'cause it hurt me so bad. And she said John was no help to her. And I thought I'd had my crying done. You get attached to them little dogs.
Oh yeah.
And thought I'd had my crying done, but when I wrapped that little warm thing up in that towel and handed Petey to her, I just broke and cried. I couldn't help it. Morse was here, wasn't he? And Becky held up good, though. Of course, I was the one that took care of him for years, expense and everything, so I give her the money. I don't think I could have stood it,
No.
went in there. And so she said John wasn't no help to her. Of course, I started, said he was a sniffing on the way out there. But they let her go in with him, and the man told me, it made me feel better afterwards. I found out how it was. And he said, well, just let him lay down, said he'll just go right off to sleep, which he did. And that made me feel better, too. But it was just, I held on to Petey longer than what I should have. But he was treated good. I took good care of him, didn't I, Dad? Like a little, but if you get attached to him, you're not ready to do that.
I remember Petey well. Did you have any other? All I remember is Midge and Petey.
That's the only two we had.
No, we had one time that the kids prayed for when it was hit by
Oh,
a
that
car.
little red dog.
And the dog got better. It was
Yeah.
hit by a car.
Well, where was we at? The Worth
We
Liner?
lived up here in the Turner house. And Teresa and Tommy and Janice and them prayed for that dog, and that dog got better. And it did get
No,
killed.
we asked. I said, well, kids, let's pray for it. The
Yeah.
dog. We did.
It got
I
hit.
said, let's pray for the dog.
Yeah,
It was a pretty dog.
beautiful dog. And I can't
And
understand.
so we did, and that dog got better.
Yeah,
But it had a habit of laying there in the car.
That would be dangerous.
And it was because
Yeah.
I didn't know it was under there and pulled it out, and that was it. I got it.
How long ago was this?
oh my. Tommy and them was about 10.
But they would just, Tommy wasn't 10, was
Oh,
he?
I think there's about 10 or somewhere along that. I forget just exactly. They're just kids. There's just kids up there.
I know they was, but I thought he was
It's the
younger than
prettiest
that.
little old red dog.
It was a pretty dog.
Yeah. They prayed for that dog and it got better. Come
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Some other things I remember is I remember that Johnny and I we would be here a lot, with you guys.
Well, I can't
We would be
feel like-
together here for some
Oh,
reason. We
yes.
always ended up here together.
Yes.
And all I remember is that all I wanted to do was just sit and be good and be quiet. And I had Johnny running all over the place, trying to get me to do
Oh,
stuff.
Lord, I don't know where you got them thoughts.
Watching
Well-
little TV. That's all I wanted. Watch a little television. But Johnny's running around acting
I don't
crazy.
know where you got them thoughts.
So
Well, I'll tell you.
can you tell us a little bit about that? And maybe after you're done, explain why Johnny was like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Donna
uh-huh.
Sue would have you both calm down. Of course, she'd come down, and when I'd keep you over the weekend, we'd have you calm down. Well, Tommy and some of his friends would come in, aggravate, and get you started. Then we'd have to get you calm down again. Yeah, I just got out and got Aunt Catherine's mops that
I don't
time.
know which one of you was the worst. You or Johnny.
Well, they wasn't real mean. They was just that had life.
They
and
was always
mischievous.
up to something.
But that was so funny. Donna Sue
They
Linda
was-
came about that.
I'd have to get off the tractor and give them both a whipping.
Said, well, Jim, they got somebody's mops, and there was new mops, and yours was out in the road and mopping them, and it was Aunt Catherine's new mops. I think you both got a whip. If I'd have been here, I'd bagged them. And Catherine didn't want you whipping, but they did. They whipped you, and then
Imagine
they
they
paid
did.
for the mops, new mops out there mopping that there road.
Well, I remember another memory I have is of me and Johnny and I playing the guitar and the piano in here on the ottoman. And do you remember that? Somebody.
It was up at your grandma's house.
Was
yeah, I
that
heard it.
where that was?
Yeah, Donna Sue can tell you about that, Phil. But I think it was up to Sister Hall, the one your grandma passed on.
Yeah.
You said, Johnny, you play the piano and I'll play the guitar. Now Donna Sue can fill you in on that. But there's always jolly times when your grandma Hall would come in, Johnny, even Brian, her being sick, not feeling good. There's always
was jolly.
always jolly.
She was jolly.
And loved you, and loved Christy. And the day Christy was born, they brought you down to me for me to watch because she had the heart condition, and of course she wanted to guess be at Lynn and Kenny, but she wasn't well to do it.
All right.
Come in and she just laughed and told me then that Linda had the little girl. Of course I kept you for a few days,
Mm-hmm.
Then after Christy was born, about 2 weeks, just about 2 or 3 weeks old, give or take, maybe a little bit older, me and Morse went up there and stayed with you and Christy while Linda and Kenny could get off on a weekend, together.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, when we were all growing up, Christy and Johnny were the two, unless I was around, of course, Johnny was rambunctious with me, but Christy and Johnny were the two quiet ones. That's kind of the way I remember. They didn't cause a lot of trouble. And it was me and Militia that really kept things
It was accident prone
Stirred
like
up.
Militia. You took care of her. Yeah.
And then you had Scotty and Melanie and
Yeah.
Kyle. You guys had a lot of grandkids. You gotta remember where.
Well, this thing we were blessed with a lot of grandkids.
And you had
Yeah.
Petey.
Yeah, of course, Petey. Yeah.
Yeah,
We watched.
I'll tell you what, we've had some real experiences on these grandkids.
Some of my favorite memories revolves around the garden that you guys always planted, and actually one of the nicest sounds I can remember ever hearing was the pressure cooker going when we were canning beans.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot. I have a lot
Yeah.
of nice memories.
Yeah,
of
we did.
growing up with you
Well, I
guys,
did, yeah.
Tommy, everybody sitting around
Yeah.
breaking beans, and I mean it sounds
Yeah.
silly,
Yeah.
but when you look back on that,
We'd
and
even take them up to your house
I
and
know,
break 'em.
I know.
We'd sit out in the yard, yeah. We'd sit out here. We'd look over there, big Catherine, Jim out there breaking their beans, to can. Yeah. And you played with Kelly. Now, you was a little, I remember the first little sentence you put together, you and Kelly played together. She was just little and you was little too. You was open them blue eyes, at the break of dawn. Of course, I slept with you because you was little. At the break of light, Brian, them blue eyes would be popped wide open. You'd have to get up with you. There wasn't no laying in the bed. They'd have to get up with you. You said that little girl. You remember playing with
talking about Kelly
yeah,
Lewis.
Talking about Kelly. We'd take you out there and let you swing on the swing with her, Yeah, you said that little girl, them big blue eyes that just pop open. Yeah, yours is all good. I loved yours all. Yeah, now Militia, I never got to keep Militia much because she was the
She was
mommy's
a
girl.
mommy's girl.
That's how come we got to going with Donna Sue and her, to do that work. Now Johnny, I could keep him all right, but oh, when Militia, when she come, that mouth would fly open. You'd have to, she'd just cry. You'd have to take her in at the doctor's office too, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Me and Morse, we got started down there going with Donna Sue because Herbie worked on the second shift.
And I'd get in the back of the car.
Yeah, tell about
We used-
Johnny.
I had a Valiant, that old brown Valiant, and I'd get off from work, and about 4 o'clock, I believe it was 4 or 5, we'd start up there, and we'd get in the car, and I'd start singing to them, and we'd all go to sleep. All of us in the back, me and Militia and Johnny, we'd be asleep before we got to the doctor's office. And then we'd leave the doctor's office. Why, there was only one restaurant down here, and that was McDonald's, down there on that highway, and it's only a 2-lane road there. And they'd say, "Papa, McDonald's, McDonald's." They'd see them arches, and they wanted a hamburger.
Yeah.
And we'd have to stop and get them a hamburger. Of course, we didn't have much, but we'd stop and get them a hamburger, and that satisfied them little fellers just as. But we'd done that for a long time, and then, of course, Militia got so that she got a kind of attached to her grandma, and then it was.
Oh yeah, when she got bigger, and when that was during her baby stage,
Yeah.
that's what I was talking about. But as she got bigger, see, I could watch her. They and her, Johnny Dale, and they'd be in school. They'd come here while Donna Sue would do that work, you know. But while she was little, she had to
Oh
be with her
no,
mom.
you couldn't.
But now you was different. I could keep you over the weekend. I could get you on a Friday and keep you even till Monday. And did a lot, didn't I, Morris?
Well, you kept
We'd
Christy
take
too
you to
that
church,
day.
yeah. And well, I went up there when your
Yeah.
other grandma passed away and
Oh
stayed.
yeah, I remember that.
Oh, you was good. You got up, and got ready for
Yeah.
school. I'd get your breakfast, not a bit of trouble. Christy, just a little bitty thing. Maybe she about 4, not very old.
Shoot, I can't remember how long ago.
Yeah.
That was 1975, and she
Yeah.
was born in 71, so I guess she was about 4 years
Yeah.
old. I think, no, was she born in, or 6?
Well,
She
she
was
heard
4 or
that.
5. I think,
yeah, yeah. Me and her watched cartoons, but you wasn't a bit of trouble, Brian. You'd get ready and go to school, and we stayed there about 4 or 5 days with them, didn't
Yeah.
we?
we
Not a
had
bit
to,
of trouble.
Yeah.
You wasn't a bit of trouble.
Yeah, we stayed up there, and I worked at the Chrysler, and did I stay all
You'd
night
come
up there?
home. Yeah, you'd come here and feed Midge. That's when we
That's
had
right,
Midge.
yeah.
You'd come and feed Midge, you know, and let her out, and come up there, and then you'd do
Yeah.
the same thing till, yeah. Yours was good.
I remember you guys had to keep Christy one time when she had chicken pox. We went to, you remember that, when you had to keep her? We went to Canada.
I might have, did it? I can't hardly.
Yeah, I remember that.
Do
Me,
you?
my mom and dad and myself went to Canada, and you guys had to keep Christy because she had chicken pox.
Because I know different times, you know, that,
Or something like that. There was something going
Yeah.
on. She was sick.
yeah. But I know different times, but yours wasn't a bit of trouble. No. But we had the good times, and then the last time you kids was coming so fast, so many little grandkids, the last time, you had a big troll. Around Easter time, I fixed that. We had that big meal here at the house, you know. And you and Johnny Dale got in there playing that little play Victrola, and Johnny Dale fell against the bed or something and cut his head. You know, they had to take him to the doctor.
I remember
Remember
that.
that? Cut an artery.
Yeah, there was blood just
Yeah.
pouring out. Yeah.
Yeah. So we really enjoyed.
Those
our
were good
grandkids.
times. We enjoyed that. I bet Johnny really enjoyed it.
Oh, me and Morris enjoyed our grandkids.
Yeah, we've enjoyed our grandkids.
Yes, and we've always our kids has always been so good to us, Brian. Always include us on everything, graduations and all activities and all the
Ball
holidays.
When you was
We've
playing
always-
ball out the Blue River, we'd go out there and watch them ball games.
So that's been the happy times. So our life is.
Yeah, our life's
grandkids-
been full. We've
Our
had
grandkids.
a
made
good
the
life. Our
difference.
grandkids made a lot of our
And
life.
we enjoyed our grandkids.
We enjoyed our kids, and then got to enjoy our grandkids. Of course, I didn't get to enjoy them as much as I'd like to because I worked in 2 jobs, and I had no choice. I had to do it. But when I could be with them, I done my best to do it. And I even remember one time, Brian, I was driving the church bus, and I had the bus full and took off, and I was way down around somewhere downtown, and Brother Howard caught up with me and said, did you leave somebody? I said, no, I don't reckon. He said, well, Tom's back there laying on the church seat. I had to go back and get him.
You remember the swimming pool? How old was you when you learned to swim?
Uh,
And Christy swam like a fish.
we both were swimming when we lived up at on Wisteria.
And Alicia learned to swim, and
Blusher
I
was
didn't know it. She
swimming.
said, "Look, Grandma, dove off in that there deep water."
Mhm.
So we've had a lot of jolly times. We had funny times, and yeah. And Alicia, I guess she one time, remember that time she come out the window, left a note, something about it, and said she's going to come down to Grandma's house and scared Donna Sue and Herbie about half
Boy,
to
I
death.
don't remember that.
That's what, yeah,
Yeah.
she did. But she's out on a pile of wood covered up. So there've been a lot of funny things happen.
That sounds like militia. Well, let me ask you this then. We've talked about I asked you before we started taping today if there was anything that had remained the same during all these years. We talked about everything that's changed. Is there anything that has remained the same?
Well, this old house remained about the same.
No, there's been a lot of work done on this old house, even though it look awful. There've been some improvements. That's all we
Well, yeah, I guess.
Well, I got me new windows this summer, tilled out windows, which I'm thankful for. That's made the difference in the coolness and it'll make the difference in the heat. And we got our water fixed right underneath, got our gas fixed right. But there's things that's wearing out that needs replaced. That
You both had said earlier, I think Grandpa had said he had no regrets. When you look back, is there anything that you change? Anything that you do differently?
Oh, if I would probably look back far enough, I'd have probably got a better education. Because see, I only had a fifth grade education. I could have had more, but I was
things couldn't be helped back then.
I was just one of them kind that school didn't interest me that much, and now I see where it should have.
So
You know what I'm
got
saying?
Grandkids there.
And I could have got a better education, and consequently got a better job, making better money, and
Oh,
maybe I
don't know
would have
about
been,
that.
maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know.
I don't
that.
know about that, Morris. You had a good job.
But I've got no regrets from working for Chrysler because, man, I got a good pension out of it, and probably I couldn't have done any better anyplace else. So I've got no regrets there, and I think I've had a pretty good full life. But I think, Brian, the real credit goes to the Lord. That's what made my life what it is.
Yeah.
Do you
I
have
just
any?
wish that I would have served the Lord younger, got in church younger. That's one of them, but like I said, I've had a good life. But of course, I was 21 when I come in church. But I just wish that, if that could have been possible, maybe there was a time for me to come in church. I don't know. But if it could have been, and, that I wished I'd have got in church more younger, served the Lord more in my youth.
Mhm.
But as far as the education, I couldn't help that. My dad dying young. Of course, I went to school. I would have had to, didn't pass on algebra. That's one thing I'd had to took over,
Mhm.
And so maybe then if I could have went 2 more years, but I quit school to help my mother, and because he was gone. But
Well, that was during the end of the Depression, back in the late 30s
well,
or early
Daddy
40s.
died when I was about 15 years old, see. And that way, Mommy was left a widow with a little 12-year-old girl and me 15. And, of course, there was things that happened, that I wanted to quit work and help Mommy, and bring in income. Of course, I went up here and worked at 16 in Miller Jones shoe store and washed dishes. And then I houseworked, and then I got me a job at the factory. But as far as being him having a long life, the Lord's blessed us.
Yeah.
Blessed me so much with grandchildren. You don't know till you get older, them little grandchildren. And there's no difference in the love of your great-grandchildren and your grandchildren. You love them just the same. Them ones that I've not got to see down at Kentucky, I love them little things,
Yeah.
So your grandkids and things like that, as you get older, you value more life. Life goes so quick, it goes so fast.
Yeah.
But them little grandkids, and I see that each one now going through their little stages.
And then,
There's
then we get to
I
see our
watch 'em.
great grandchildren. That's,
Yeah.
you know, that's a real blessing if you stop and think about it, that we've lived to be raised up with our grandchildren, and then here we are, our great-grandchildren, and we're getting to see them raised.
Each one has their own little personality, their
they
own
do.
little sweetness, their own little purtiness and cuteness. You love them all.
Did you ever think back in 1945, 46, when things were tough and you guys were just getting started, did you ever think ahead into the future and visualize the family that you have now, the big family, the loving family?
Yeah, that's
Everybody
right.
doing some well. Everybody's doing well. You guys are doing well. You're retired with a good pension. Did you ever look ahead and say, boy, you know, if I hope this happens one day, or what did you think about the future much back then? Or?
No, you never really, Brian. No, I never.
No, I didn't.
We just had to work from day to day to try to make a good enough life for us all and our family, and make provisions for them. But my family, for me and her,
Close, loving,
that's been our life, our family.
Carrie.
They made our life complete.
That's
The
right.
Lord first, but that
That's
family,
right. Lord first and then them.
that family made our life complete, because we got to see them, all of them get in church at one time. We got to see that, and we was a happy family. We had a lot of ups and downs, but we never let it take us down far enough to even give us any hard time, because them kids would keep you perked up.
The caring family, that's what we have. You just named it, a loving family and a caring family. Like now, if one of them gets sick or one maybe go through some bad misfortune, it affects us, you know. It hurts because we're a family that cares for each other, that reaches out to each other. And that's what it's needful. Yeah. Like I told Linda one time, I said, Linda, you get sick. I said, I get to praying for you. And that's the love. We've been blessed by every one of them. And even my son-in-laws, I said, we've been blessed by the most good son-in-laws. Kenny has been a caring, good father, loved his family, and Herbie, and I hope, like I've said before, I hope and pray that Janice now will have a happy home, you know, because she's got married again, and I wish her this what like that, the same that I've had for these others.
Well, I can't think of. I think I speak for everybody. I can't think of any way we could be more blessed with better grandparents than you guys, or parents.
And we're thankful for
Oh
that.
yes,
We've tried to treat all of them alike, and tried to be.
Loved them all.
We tried to love them, not interfere with them, not interfere in their business.
Yeah, I'm
That's
glad I
all.
wasn't around when you got any weapons.
Well, you had plenty of chances. I don't know how you missed it, because I had plenty of weapons. But is there anything that you guys wanted to? This is pretty much the end. Is there anything that I'm forgetting? Anything you want to add, or is there any last words of wisdom that you want to?
Well, serve the Lord is one of the best wisdom that I could give to any of my grandchildren or great-grandchildren, is to serve the Lord. That'll be your best life you'll ever have.
Well, that's true there. We're really blessed with our grandkids that
And
we've been blessed to be with them like we are now.
Love every
Like
one of them.
we've always been reached out to. And I think that's what's made me, like around the holidays now, to me and Dad Keller, just to get to be with our grandkids and our little great-grandkids and our loved ones. You know, that is the best gift. It's not in the presents you get, you know, and things like that. And I think that's what's made ours, because we've all had love one to the other.
When them little
Friends.
of course, men don't do that, boys, whatever. But them little great-granddaughters walk up and kiss Grandma or Grandpa. That's the height of, that's a satisfying thing to a grandpa and grandma, or a great-grandfather and great-grandmother. Of course, boys don't do it, but when I reach and hug you and Johnny, I feel I'm letting you know I love you guys, and just last night I hugged Johnny like I did you, and I just feel good when I do it, because you're my grandsons, and I'd miss you if I didn't have you. That's the way I look at it.
Well, we've been blessed to having them. That's been the part of our blessing of our life. That people may looked at, maybe hearing about the bad times, maybe the hard times we went through with. It wasn't all unhappy times. It because our kids our kids really, like we said, around Christmas time, we never had no sad times, did we, Dad?
No.
Because our kids made up for it, and our grandkids come along.
But then whenever I'm having health problems, why my kids is right there.
Yeah.
If I'm in the hospital, they're right there. And Kenny and Linda took me over to Indianapolis and
And our grandkids, too.
through that
Good.
stuff over there. And you don't never forget stuff like that. You're just thankful that you got kids and you hate to be a big problem for them. We don't want to be a big problem, but
And
we
Linda don't
appreciate
want to
what
hear
they
that.
do.
And Linda don't want to hear that. She'll say, now, Daddy, don't you talk like that. And even the grandkids, they're all right there, hustled right around. Kristen, bringing the little ones, and Leisha, all of you's right there gathered around, so.
But them little bitty grandsons and granddaughters, when they walk up and kiss great grandma and great grandpa, that's little old Zachy, he'll come up and he'll kiss you, and little Sarah. Little Sarah's a little more
She's
back
very
from,
pretty.
from
Well, each one of
from
them
what
has a
little
pretty.
Zachy is.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh,
she,
my.
but
Oh,
she,
it's
of course, when she ain't been around us that much either.
She's
Well, little Zachy ain't either, as far as that's concerned.
Sarah's kind of shy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's shy.
Yeah, she is.
She's
Yeah,
bashful.
yeah.
But they're all going through their little stages, and each one is just as cute and pretty as the
Yeah.
other.
Well, you got another grandkid coming, Kristen.
Yeah,
another
we're
great
glad
So
grandchild.
we hope it's a little girl.
Well,
We want it to be a little girl.
I think everybody hopes it's a
Little
girl.
brown-eyed girl, we
Well,
hope.
well, I can tell you this, and you guys will be the first ones to know. Since nobody's going to see this tape till Christmas, by the time it gets here, everybody will know. But Debbie's pregnant.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Oh, we're the first one that knows.
you
Wonderful.
guys. Well, other than me and Debbie, of course, we knew.
Great.
But
Oh, wonderful.
and I think I told Jenny Fairchild I had to tell somebody. I can't walk around with that kind of pressure on me. I got to let it go. I got to tell
Oh,
somebody.
wonderful.
But anyway, you guys are the first to know.
Well, we're finding out.
Maybe that'll be a little
Wonderful.
boy, just like your mom.
Don't
and
make
dad.
no difference, does it,
No,
Brian?
it doesn't make a bit
no.
of difference.
Now, Brian, like I told you before in this other interview,
They're all special.
if I had all girls, I'd been just as happy.
And if you had all boys. Oh,
But don't. It's going to be
no,
a big
it's a
surprise.
secret.
Oh, yeah.
How
Big
far
surprise.
along is she?
And she's just 4 weeks along, so anything could
No,
happen.
we're not.
That's
telling.
true. I
And-
This will be a secret
and
between us.
She hasn't been to the doctor yet, but she took the tests and
Isn't that
she's
wonderful?
pregnant.
No,
So-
Brian, this will not go no farther. Now, this will be their secret. It'll be our secret.
Well, we're gonna. Debbie's mom and dad's coming in Saturday night, so
Oh,
and
this
we're gonna
Saturday?
we're gonna tell them then, and then we're gonna tell my mom and
Oh,
dad.
this Saturday?
Oh,
This
you're going to
Saturday,
tell your
yeah.
mom.
Then we're gonna go Sunday and tell my mom and dad.
I think it's wonderful.
Well, we do too.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
I hope it's a little boy.
I hope so too. I hope one of these days we can watch this tape, and that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah?
And Kyle loves them all. That little thing, he's special. He loves little
Yeah, he
kids.
kind of likes you and Johnny. He likes
He
to
likes
pick
the
on
roughhousing, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's smart.
It's sad when I see his little hands, and of course we take him up
But
and
he's
have
going
him
to get
eat,
better on
and
that.
them little fingers, he can't
Yeah,
work 'em like me and you.
But we'd want Tommy
We watch
Dale
him
to
have
know
to pick up a piece of pizza with his fingers stuck out like this, and it's
Tommy is a
pitiful.
special daddy.
Yeah.
I am blessed so much. He loves that little boy, and we love him. And you know what? It's like our church people now, Brother Moles and different ones. He's a miracle. We've seen what the Lord has done for our family, because there wasn't even much
Yeah.
hope for him.
Yeah.
And see, now he's a walking. And see what the Lord has been doing
Well, look-
for our family.
look what he done for Brian. When Brian, you was real hyper. I mean, you had to go on medicine, but we
Went
took you
against you.
over to the dining hall
Linda had you prayed
and
for.
had you prayed for, and Brian, that really made a difference too, in that
Yeah.
being so hyper.
You would get upset and you'd just leap up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah, you was hyper, and that medicine didn't work. So we started taking you through prayer line, and that's what worked. And just
Yeah.
like Kyle, now we see him a walking, and just like we're going to see more.
He used to come into church, Brian, when he was real little, about size of Zachy. Yeah, about size of Zachy, or maybe a little over.
Yeah,
But he'd come in there and he'd point to his head like that and point up there.
want to
the
go
front.
get prayed
He
for.
wanted to go get prayed for.
Yeah.
And we've just seen so many good things because of
Miracles.
the church, of what God has done for our family and our grandkids, and It's just unbelievable, but it is and it isn't.
And even
Because
Linda
if
was
you know
critical.
the Lord, it's believable.
Well,
it can happen.
Linda was critical one time.
Yeah.
And and the Lord brought her out. Which different things now. And Herbie, like our son-in-law there, Herbie was critical. See what that there
Right.
his stomach, and where the Lord is, and it's been our heritage because we've held on and stayed in church and served the Lord, and He's answered prayer. And which there'll probably be a lot of prayers answered that me and Morris won't even may not live to
That's it.
see. Then we might not, but we've got that promise.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, if there's nothing else, can we do one last thing here?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this real quick. Get this back. Let me fix this here so we can see this. Oops.
Ron didn't know he had so much chatterbox
Oh,
grandparents.
yes, I did. I knew. Okay. Now, if you guys can scoot over, and I'll sit in the middle.
Okay.
Let's see if we can.
All right. Let me scoot over here. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
This is the first time I've been on camera.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now we can just tell Mom Merry Christmas
Yeah.
from Grandma and Grandpa and Brian. So you
Oh.
ready?
Yeah.
On three.
One, two.
Merry
Merry
Christmas,
Christmas,
Mom.